Hello and welcome to the News at 7, where we get to the heart of the day's stories and communities across Scotland. Tonight, a threat of legal action over compliance with the Supreme Court ruling on biological sex. Women's rights campaigners hand the Scottish Government a deadline, saying single-sex toilets and changing facilities must be provided immediately. We've spoken to Sex Matters, the group behind the action. Also tonight, NHS Grampian make a fresh plea to women to help others conceive. And we'll hear from campaigners against fuel poverty as the Scottish Government says it'll no longer offer its new winter fuel payment on a universal basis. All the sport too, of course, with Sheila. What have you got for us tonight?
We'll get reaction as Rangers, Hibs and Dundee United find out who they'll face in their European qualifiers. And rare letters from Mary Queen of Scots have gone under the hammer. We'll find out how much they sold for. Hi, I'm Laura MacIver. Welcome to the News at 7. Women's rights campaigners have given the Scottish Government a deadline to comply with the UK Supreme Court's ruling on biological sex. In April, the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that a woman is defined by biological sex under equalities law. But now the Sex Matters group says the government is delaying implementing new policies and guidance and has issued a letter warning of legal action in 14 days if they don't act. The Scottish Government said it accepted the Supreme Court judgment and is awaiting new guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Commission.
Well, I appreciate that people have concerns and they are quite rightly pressing the Scottish Government and indeed others to make sure that we are following what the Supreme Court has laid out. And that's why I want to give that reassurance that we accept the Supreme Court judgment and we're moving forward right across government at pace and consistently to ensure that if there are changes to be made, we're already working on those.
Well, earlier I spoke to Forstater, who's the chief executive of the campaign group threatening the legal action, Sex Matters, and I asked her why they'd given the government this deadline.
Because the Supreme Court judgment was a model of clarity. It set out what the Equality Act says, which is that men are male and women are female, and where you have single-sex services, they should be provided on the basis of sex. And when we met the Scottish Government, they said to us that they were reviewing their policies, but they weren't going to change anything until the regulator, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, had finalised its new code of practice. And we think that's not good enough. The law is what the law is. And in fact, the Supreme Court says it's always been the law that there are two sexes and that single-sex services should be by sex. So there's really no excuse for waiting.
They did say they accepted the Supreme Court judgment. They also said, as you have just said, that they are awaiting this guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Commission. Does it not make sense to wait for that guidance so that policy guidelines and advice can be consistent?
No, because the responsibilities are really clear. They come from the law. The advice from the Equality and Human Rights Commission is quite useful for small businesses that don't necessarily have legal advice. But the Scottish Government is not that. And it's very clear what they should do, which is particularly for everyday services, things like toilets, changing rooms, showers, is just to make clear that where they have that woman sign on the door, that means female only. No men should come in, even men who identify as transgender, as non-binary, as trans women, because those spaces are there to protect the dignity and privacy of women.
So what should trans people do in the meantime then? Many of whom have said that they feel confused at the moment about the situation, they feel scared even.
There's nothing to be confused or scared about. What we've asked the Scottish Government to do is to put a statement on its website that says that they provide services based on biological sex, and wherever possible, they'll also provide a unisex alternative. And in almost all cases, they already have that provision. What they need is to be clear about the rules.
You've set a 14-day deadline on this. What happens if nothing has changed in 2 weeks' time?
Then we'll be talking to our lawyers and seeking permission to bring a judicial review, because we think that what they're doing is unlawful right now.
The Equality and Human Rights Commission has already published interim guidance, including saying that trans women should not be permitted to use women's facilities in places like hospitals, shops and restaurants. Do you not see that interim guidance already being followed? Is that an issue?
No, it's not being followed. Until the Scottish Government, until NHS Scotland, until bodies like NHS Fife have clear guidance on their own websites, in their own staff handbooks and in their own training, then it won't be followed. So that's their responsibility. They're employers and service providers. They need to follow the law as it is right now, and there's really no excuse for waiting.
OK, Maya Forstater, many thanks for joining us on the News at 7.